In this video we look at the parametric modifiers in 3D Studio Max. The parametric modifiers are actually quite nice and have one big advantage to conventional 3D modeling methods. The advantage is that you can always change the parameters. You can add modifiers in this modifier stack, and you have full control of your model. You just have to understand these modifiers and know what you can do with them. And so this is what we try the next minutes. We will look at this kind of methods a little bit closer. Okay, we always start with a really simple object. We always start with a cube. I go into create geometry and then box, and with my keyboard entry we just draw a box 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters. I go into create, and here we go. That's my simple box. And I will also adjust a little bit my grid behind my box. I go into my snap toggle, right mouse click, and then into home grid. I have a grid spacing of 10 centimeters. I will just change this to 1 centimeter, actually really small. But now we can just see that it fits on my grid, and we can just compare certain very few things later on. Modify you can add under modify or with this modifier list. There's also a new method in 2014 3D Studio Max. That's this enhanced layout menu, and it's really nice. I'm just using it because I think, especially for beginners, that's a much better way of using 3D Studio Max. So we go into modifiers. You can just switch it on, right mouse click, and say show icons and text. I go into modify. The first modifier I add is one edit polymer modifier, and on top I go into selection and I will add a volume select modifier. And later on I will just explain why I did this. This volume select modifier we switch off, and we start with the first modifier, and that's a quite common modifier and a really nice modifier. That's the FFD modifier, and FFD modifier stands for freeform deformers. There are different kind of types: 2x2x2, 3x3x3, 4x4x4, FFD box or cylinder. We just go into FFD box modifier, and we just see that it automatically wraps around something like a cave with 4x4x4 control points. And that's the first thing. You can set the number of control points. That's also why I chose this, and it's quite similar. You can also go to 3x3x3, and then you more or less chose the 3x3 modifier, or you can just say 4x4 and height by 3, for example, and then you can just see that it changed. We now have let's go into my perspective. Now we have in height dimension 3 control points, and in the other two directions 4 control points. Okay, I changed a little bit my viewport settings. I go into realistic, zoom extend all, and instead of lightning shadow default, I go into my scene lights so it looks a little bit better. Show save frame, I just switch off right now. And the interesting thing about this FFD box is, and probably with all the other modifiers, that you have a pull down menu, and you can see that you have a quite good control about of your geometry. If I just choose control points and probably choose the middle row here, then I can transform these points. I can just move them. And oops, that's really annoying and probably unsuspected. Nothing is working, nothing is happening. And that's the first thing we can learn. There's a reason for this, because the topology underneath my box has only length segment 1 by 1 by 1. So there's actually nothing what can move. So what you have to do is you have to change it. If I go into length segments 10, nothing is happening, of course, because it moved in this direction. Next, the width direction, nothing is happening. And now the height direction. Then we can see it was something happening, and so you really have to be aware of what is the topology like underneath, and this also has an impact on your FFD box and with all the other modifiers actually. So if the modifier doesn't work properly, just check the topology underneath, and so probably you need more segments, you have to tessellate this or something, doing something like this. Okay, so we have control points, and we can move them, we can twist them, we can do whatever we want to do, we can scale them and do all these things in all directions. And I'll just scale this a little bit, and these guys I will just turn. And if I turn something, I always switch on my angle snap, so I have a better control. I can also see it here down in this menu while I'm turning. I can see the angle I'm turning my object, which is also quite nice. If we choose this lattice, this little cave around this, then you can see that you also can move the cave, and you can see that the whole cave has a big impact on our geometry if I move it down, and then the geometry looks like before. And what you can also do is you can choose set volume, and you can choose one of these control points. I just choose the first top control points, and you move this, and it sounds probably looks a little bit weird what you can do with this, but the advantage is if you have a geometry where a normal FFD box doesn't fit the way, then you can just adjust these points and go again into control points, and for now move these control points. You can see that it again has an impact on my geometry. Okay, I'll just go back a little bit, and here we go, probably one further step. Okay, before we started with this FFD box, I added two controllers, this edit poly and my volume select, and the volume select is still switched off. So what we do is we just have a look at my edit poly, and if I go into edit poly and choose, for example, like vertex, you can see even if you have your switch end result toggle on, then the FFD box seems that it doesn't work anymore. And this is quite interesting because it reacts to the selection. So if I just select some of them, then you can see that our FFD box is still working. And that's probably also something really interesting and really important, that whatever you do reacts to the selection. And I can do the same thing on my poly level, and you can see that it's always working. And this also means if you have a selection underneath and you just change this selection, your whole thing is a little bit muddled up afterwards. The next question we have is, what happens if I change the topology underneath? So I would just go into box. We still have this length segments width and height by 10 by 10 by 10, and I just change this to 15. And what we see is that my whole topology is completely muddled up. It's more or less out of control, and this is easy to explain because every polygon has a number, and my FFD box is related, or my selection of edit poly is related to the number of these polygons. This means that my edit poly doesn't work properly anymore. And this is something which is important when I work with modifiers and want to work in a parametric way. Edit poly is not the best tool to select your polygons because it's related to the topology. There's a much better way, and we want to use this now constantly. We use this volume select, because what volume select does, it just go into volume select, and important you have to go into volume select and go by vertices. And for a moment we just switch on show end result toggle off. And what we can see is that our volume select builds also something like a lattice, like a cave. You can move this cave, and everything in the cave is selected. And what you can do is, again, important, object has to be switched on. so object has to be switched on. Often you have to switch on vertex point. What you can do is you can use, for example, like soft selection and have a fall off in your selection. I just move my thing a little bit up and increase my fall off. And if I go into show result toggle on, then you can see that my volume select has an impact on my FFD box. And very nice, also when I go into my basic topology and I just increase the size of my segments, I go into 20 by 30 and so on and so on. It still works together with all the modifiers on top. So what you do with your volume select, you have a gizmo around, and this box, everything in between this box will be selected. And of course you can also transform this box. You can make this box, you have to choose these gizmo. You can make it smaller, you can make it bigger, you can scale it, and all these things. So that's a much better way of selecting the polygons for the modifier on top of this volume select in these terms, and this is really good to remember. Also good to remember, next to my soft selection and the option to transform my gizmo, that you can just change the shape of the gizmo. You can just probably choose a sphere, or you can choose a cylinder. You can turn it around in all directions, and you can just see that it also has an impact on our geometry. You can even choose another geometry, for example like this teapot, and then you just go into your gizmo volume select again and you choose mesh type, and now I choose my teapot, and if I just move my teapot into my geometry, then you can see that also geometries can be an option to transform my FFD box or anything else, just because of the selection of my volume select modifier. Okay, I go back into volume select and I choose my box again and delete my edit poly, and we have a look again at my control points. Actually I just switch off my volume select, and so I have all my control points which have an effect, impact of the whole geometry. And with my FFD box I change my settings to 4 by 4 by 4, and we just modify our object again. I just scale a little bit this part, and these I just twist a little bit and turn it also around in this direction, so a lot of things are happening. It shouldn't look nice, but be a little bit more complex. And what we want to look at is another modifier, and this is actually the relax modifier. Let's have a look at this, what this one does. Okay, I go again into modify and then into my parametric geometry modifier, and there's one modifier here, it's called relax, and I add it. And what we can see is that when I increase my value, maximum is 1, and also increase my iterations, that it makes sharp edges a little bit more smooth, and it's not like mesh smooth. It still tries to keep the geometry. You can see it probably even better in this little picture, this preview of the relax modifier. You can see if you have geometries with sharp edges, then you can see on the right side that it can make everything a little bit more round, a little bit more fluffy, and that's probably something which is sometimes quite good if you have a geometry which has to be slightly more smooth, but you don't want to use a modifier like mesh smooth, for example. Okay, I delete both modifiers, relax and FFD box, and we look at another modifier that's actually the push modifier. I go into geometry and then under modifiers, geometry, parametric, and here we find our push modifier. And the push modifier does the following: it just pushes out the geometry, and you can define the amount of centimeters. For example, if I now say I want to push it out 2 centimeters, then you can see what it does. It just blows up like a balloon this geometry, and that's also why I use this grid. You can just see that you have a quite good control that it really pushes it out 2 centimeters. If I switch it off again, you can see the geometry, and if I switch it on, and we know that every grid unit is 1 centimeter, then you can see that it exactly pushes out the geometry 2 centimeters, and of course it really depends on the amount of segments. And of course also here you can use your volume select. If I switch on my volume select and I go to reset so it fits on the geometry again, I can choose my gizmo and I can make it slightly smaller. And if I now go again into show end result toggle on, and it's important that here in my volume select again you choose stack selection level vertex. Okay, I go show is on toggle on, then you can see that I can move my gizmo, and my push only reacts at the points where my volume select gizmo is actually selecting selecting vertex points. When I scale my volume select gizmo in top view, then you can see that I can produce something like nice cushions. This is something like a nice cushion on this top of my cube, and of course I have to move my my gizmo because I use volume select. I have to put it a little bit on a height that I again have all my vertex points selected, and then I'm again at a height of 2 centimeters. And when I switch off my volume select, you can just see that it doesn't have any impact anymore, and nothing is selected. So in these terms it only worked with my use soft selection and my volume select modifier, because here again I can just change the topology, and it still works pretty well. The next modifier we look at is our bend modifier, and I just go into modifiers and then parametric. I choose bend, and what I just want to show is that you can define the angle here, and I just choose 90 degrees. There's nothing special. You can also twist it in the directions. You can just twist it in all direction, and you can choose in which angle it should bend, X, Y, and Z. And what's interesting about this, or quite important to work with this properly, there's a polar menu. And with this, in this polar menu again, you can choose the gizmo. You can move the whole gizmo of this object. And what's even more interesting is that you can choose the center of your bending. And this is quite important. If I go into center, I can select my center point. And now I just switch on my snap toggle, right mouse click, I go into grid points, I switch vertex actually off, and here I can just see that I can snap it to my grid underneath, and you just see that I always change the center of my bending, which is definitely really important in a design and architectural environment, that you can define this. And this is quite nice because with this you have a really good control, and if you use the snap toggles you can do it really precisely. It's all about the combination of modifiers. If I just switch my snap toggle off and I add another modifier down, add the modifier spherical or spherify. I just did it from this polar menu. You can also go here and just go into geometric, parametric, and choose the spherify modifier. Then you have a modifier which actually tries to push every geometry to a sphere, and if I change the percentage, then you can just see that it starts with the modifier underneath, whatever this is. Switch this band off, then it's actually a cube. And I switch the band on and it's still working, and it also works with my banding. And if I now go into volume select, it looks a little bit weird. There's one reason, because my gizmo is such small. It's actually this one. But if I now go again into my reset gizmo, then you can see it works again. And if I change my gizmo, for example, then you can see that it always tries to produce a sphere. I just go into 100% now. And it always tries to produce a sphere in my gizmo selection with my volume select, which is actually quite nice. You can already see that really interesting geometries come out of this. And I think they're quite controlled, because I can really change my gizmo in a way that it fits to the result I wanted to achieve. And if I now switch off my band, you can see that it's a nice transformation from a cube to a sphere, in this case, for example. There are many other modifiers. If you look at this list in Geometry Parametric, for example, like the stretch modifier, is also really easy to understand. I just have to put it onto the top. Obviously, you can just change in my modifier menu the hierarchy, and then you can see that you can stretch my geometry, and you can change the amplify. And I just switch my spherify off, because this is a little bit weird right now. And I also switch my volume select off, and then you can see what you can actually do with this. And that's interesting that you have full control, and that you can just go through these. And now I put my volume select, my stretch modifier under my volume select, and just change a little bit the order, and it's working again. And this is something, when you play around with this a little bit, it feels really comfortable, because you can change the whole geometry in a parametric way. Two modifiers at the beginning are not so obvious in terms of using them, and that's the noise modifier and actually the wave modifier. We just have a quick look, because you can do you can change the geometry, say like this, in an interesting way if you use this. And what we have right now, I just add the noise modifier. You can't see anything, because you have to define a value. You want to have a noise in X direction of 2 centimeters, in Y direction of 2 centimeters, and in Z direction of 2 centimeters. And now you can change the scale. The smaller the scale, obviously it was a little bit too much, the more noise in a way you can you get, and the structure is just changing. If you want to have a little bit of noise in your geometry, this means it just moves slightly, then you need to choose a high volume, or you just go to a lower volume. And it could be a starting point for your geometry. You would like to have something more distorted. I just switch my edge face off, and I also go into shaded view, so you can see it a little bit better. And when I now choose switch on my edit poly again, and volume select will go off, and I just choose my edit poly and go into choose all polygons. Then I can go into properties in my graphite modeling tools, and I just choose the hard mode in terms of my shading. And you can see that then you already have a little bit like a folded structure, like hard edges, which is actually quite nice. And then you can here again change probably your basic topology underneath. I just choose a really small, very few length, width and height segments, and you can just see that this is a really fast and quick way of exploring geometries in this kind of direction. Go again into noise and just increase the value, and you can just see what's actually happening. If I switch on my volume select again, then I can just move my gizmo up and down. You can see that this has an impact on my geometry. And what you can also do is a little bit like playing. You can go into your noise and you go into animate, and if you then use the timeline, you can see that the geometry is constantly changing into this with this frequency, and you can just have a look at this, what it feels like, and probably choose the direction you want to go in terms of your design. Quite similar is actually the wave modifier. I go into modifier, geometry, and then I choose this wave modifier. And what it actually does, it just makes waves out of your geometry. And I just switch off my volume select so we have a better impression of what's actually happening. And you can define the length of the wave. So now I have a wave of 30 centimeters. My geometry is only 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters, so it's only one wave. And then you can see that you can define different kind of wavelength. And interestingly is that I now have a wavelength of 2 centimeters, but you can't see anything in terms of the geometry. We had this before. What you have to do is you have to change the basic topology underneath. It's just much too small, and just change it to 50 by 50 by 50. So we have a little bit more polygons, and then you can see that it works quite well. Now you have a wavelength of 2 centimeters. It's definitely probably a little bit too much. I just increase it again to 5 centimeters. You can change the amplitudes and work with around a little bit. And if I just increase it again, and then probably also go into this pull down menu, you can turn around this gizmo, and you immediately have interesting geometries which are worth looking at. And just you can obviously also just produce really simple wave structures for 3D environments. I quickly do a plane with length and width segments of 100, and if I now add my wave modifier, then you can change the first amplitude, and I obviously also have to change the length of the weight. And if I just change, you can see that it has a really big impact because my plane was also quite small. I can change the second amplitude, and you can produce really nice wave structures with these modifier, and also define the decay when it actually starts and when it actually stops. Quite similar if I, for example, use this ripple modifier, you can just define the amplitude and the wavelengths, and then you have a little bit like waves from a center, where you can also define the position of the center. I can just change it, and here we go. So you can also use modifiers to define a center for these kind of waves related to a center. The very last modifier we want to look at is my Displace modifier. I just delete my Ripple modifier and I go into geometry and sorry, not this menu, just the menu with the illustrations, geometry, and now I can't choose my push modifier because I first have to select my surface, obviously. And again I go into geometry and I can choose my Displace modifier. And what is quite nice about the Displace modifier, we can define the strength, and it's so far doesn't do anything. What you have to do is you can choose an image, and that's really interesting. I just go into an image and I can choose whatever kind of image. I just preferred already one image, and here you can define the strength, and you can just see that it now comes out 5 centimeters. Also with the display modifier you have a gizmo. You can move this gizmo. It actually now has exactly the size of my plane, and you can also define the length of and the height of this modifier, of the Displace modifier, and obviously reposition it. And that's really interesting way of also integrating pictures. And I go into fit again, and obviously it's the same like before. It's really important what kind of geometry is underneath. If I, for example, go to a geometry 10 by 100 or 10 by 10, 10 by 10, you can hardly see anything anymore because you need a decent amount of vertices or polygons to play with these kind of modifiers. Okay, let's have a look at this main modifier menu again. Instead of a bitmap, you can also go to your material library and just choose something. And I just go into maps and I just choose this checker map. And what you can also do is then you can just put this map into your material editor, just drag and drop as an instance, and here you can play with this kind of modifier. You can change the size, and you can just see that it immediately has an impact on your geometry. Once I chose a bitmap again, and for my Displace modifier, I just do this again like before, and I remove this map underneath, so you can see this is my bitmap. I can drag and drop this bitmap into my material editor, and then I can change this bitmap. I can just change the size of it, and it doesn't have an impact now because you just have to drag and drop it again onto this maps channel, and I choose instance. I remove my bitmap on top, and then you can see that you have really good control with my material editor. You can do a lot of things. You can blur it a little bit, and all these kinds of things to make to change the look of the whole picture, and this terms means also of the geometry. Okay, I go again into 1 centimeter, so it fits again. I double click on my picture, so we have an idea of my picture. It just looks really blurry. I just did it before. I just go into 0 again, and then I can, for example, just use 3D Studio Max a little bit like Photoshop. I can just change the look of this picture, probably also invert it. And you can just see that the geometry underneath is following. Okay, thanks for watching.